morning. My name is Sirisha. I am the Assistant Professor of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar Law College. Today my topic is Transfer of Property Act 1882. I am going to discuss about the introduction of Transfer of Property Act 1882. The Act was enacted in the year 17th February 1882 and it came into the force on 1st July 1882. And this Act consists of 137 sections divided in 8 chapters. We are going to do. And this Transfer of Property Act, another very important, this is not only Transfer of Property Act we are going to do. In this Act we are also going to deal with another Act that is called as Easement Act of 1882. But we are not going to discuss about the Easement Act today. We are only going to see what is the Transfer of Property Act 1882 talks about. First we have to know what is property. So now what is property means here in the property I say that the property has been divided into two sets, that is tangible and intangible. Now what is tangible means tangible again divided into two sectors, that is movable and immovable properties. Now what is movable property, what is immovable properties? Movable property is nothing but which can be moved easily from one place to another place. We call it as movable property. Coming here to the immovable property is that property which cannot be moved very easily. So that's why we call it as immovable property. And at the same time, these two properties can be seen and can be felt. So that's why we call it as tangible property. Coming to intangible property, the main thing is which cannot be seen or which cannot be felt. But we call them also as a property. That is a very important thing, intangible. So intangible property. So for example, I say that goodwill, trademarks. Another one is copyrights. All this comes under your tangible. Even importantly, not only all this, another very important which will be dealt in the transfer of property, that is actionable claim. That is called as actionable claim. So actionable claim is also said as intangible property. So now what is, I will explain you what is actionable claim first. You have to know all this goodwill, you know what is trademarks, you know copyrights, you know. All this comes under your one act that is called as your IPR Act. And this actionable claim might be a very new topic for you. So now actionable claim, what do you mean by this? I will tell you with an example. Like for example, A and B were two friends and A has given for B 10,000 rupees. He has given 10,000 rupees to B. And whenever A went to B and asked about the money, B never acted on that. And when he has not decided to give the money. So now when B is not giving the money, now what A can do? Now A has only one thing, that he can approach the court of law. So now when he has filed the suit in the court, that time what we say that he is taking an action against B, and this 10,000 what he is going to recover, that we are going to call it as a claim. So that is called as an actionable claim. So now hope you understood about the actionable claim. So here in another meaning, in a very simple way, we can say actionable claim are those which are given any debt given without any security is called as an actionable claim. Also we can define the actionable claim in a simple way. So now you understood about the property. So the property are, once again I repeat, is a tangible and intangible. So movable property and immovable property. So here in transfer of property, mainly we are going to deal with the immovable property only. We will see why we are going to deal with immovable property only. I'll tell you in the later class. Then next I'll talk about the transfer. Now I'll talk about the transfer. Now transfer. What is the meaning of transfer? So in a simple word, what is the meaning of transfer? Giving something to one person to the another person is called as a transfer. Now as for the Property Act, as for the Transfer of Property Act, what do you mean by transfer? This transfer can be done in the two forms. That is, one is an act of the parties, and next one we call it as by operation of operation of law. Now I will explain you what is act of the party. Before entering into the act of the parties, I will conclude with your operation of law. Now what is operation of law means? By law, any transfer is going to take place, that is called as operation of law. For example, I say that through succession law, any transfer taking law. So it comes under the operation of law. And testamentary, any transfer by testamentary form. So what is testamentary form? Testamentary form is nothing but writing a will and leaving the person, that is called as a testamentary form. In that way also the transfer can be taken, that is by the operation of law the transfer is going to take place. And through the succession, I said through the testamentary or by court of law, if by court of law or through by court of law, by decree, by insolvency, by bankrupt, all this are through by operation of law. But in the Transfer of Property Act, we are not going to study about all this. We are not going to study about all this form of transfers. What we are going to study in the Transfer of Property Act is we are going to see the act of the parties. Now, what is the act of the parties? The act of the parties means transfer between two persons. Between two persons we are going to learn in the Transfer of Property Act. Again, transfer between two parties means here in the transfer of property, it is based on the one maxim that is called as inter vivos. Now, what do you mean by inter vivos? Means nothing but transfer between two living persons. I said just now I said two persons, but here the transfer of property is based on the maxim called as the inter vivos, that is transfer between two living persons. Here in the living persons, I will tell you. Living person includes not only living person, it includes companies, trust, every other person also comes under living person. But the beauty of the Transfer of Property Act says that living person also includes an unborn person also. Even we can consider unborn person as a living person. Is it clear now? What are the transfers? So this is the transfer of property. In this way, by the act of parties, by the operation of law, we are going to transfer. And we are mainly going to deal with the transfer of party. In the transfer of property, we are going to deal with the act of the parties, that is transfer between two living persons, that is called as inter vivos. Not only apart from this, the transfer can also be made through sale. It can also be made through sale, or it can also be made through exchange. It can also be made through gift. It can also be made through mortgage. It can also be made through lease. It can also be made through actionable claim. So in this all the forms also, if you are transferring the property, that is as a transfer. It is also called as a transfer of property. So another very important point I'll tell you now, apart from this, so now you understood what is transfer, now you understood the Property and Act of 1882. Now, as I said that this act consists of how many sections? It consists of 137 sections and 8 chapters. So apart from this, you should know who is called as a owner. Here in the transfer of property, the basic term you should know about the ownership. Having a title, the person will not become the owner, because having the title and he is having the possession, but he is not having the rights to do anything, then he is not called as an owner. Then when can a person be called as an owner? Now, this ownership is being divided into two types, that is absolute ownership, it is called as absolute ownership and I say that lifetime ownership. Now, what is the difference we have to learn? The absolute ownership is that, ownership which gives the rights and all the possession absolutely. Here, this person is giving all the rights. He is being given all the rights. Means he can enjoy the property at the same time. He can even sell the property. That time we call it as that person. We call it as absolute owner. Now coming to the lifetime ownership. Now what is lifetime ownership? Means the lifetime ownership is that ownership which can be given payable only for the lifetime, not for the any other means. Means again the lifetime ownership is not another means. Here the person only can enjoy the property but he cannot sell the property. So that can be called as lifetime ownership. Is it clear, Rama? So these two terms are very important in your transfer of property, because how the property is being transferred, whether it is transferred in an absolute form or whether it is transferred in a lifetime form, we have to see whenever client gives us a paper, whenever he gives us title paper, we have to see whether what type of ownership he is possessing, we have to see and conclude. So therefore for every client, whatever they think that the absolute and the lifetime ownership is one and the same, but we have to give them a brief thing and we have to briefly say them what is the difference between that, and then we can say that see that person has given you a lifetime but not the absolute, so now you can enjoy the property but you can't sell the property. So in that way we have to clear the doubts of the client in this manner, for this, especially for this manner. Is it clear? So hope I think the introduction you have understood about the transfer of property. Once again a small briefing I will do very fastly, that it has enacted in 17th February. It is enacted on the 17th February, came into the force on 1st July, and this 1st July 1882. Then what is a property? First we have to understand what is a property. So here as per the law, the property has been divided into two phases, that is tangible, intangible, and this tangible is divided again into, by law we say it is a movable property and immovable property. And immobile property, why we are saying that? Why? Because we can see them and we can feel them, so we call it as movable and immobile property. Coming to the intangible property, here intangible property are which cannot be seen or felt, but again we call them as a property, like for example trademarks, copyright, actionable claims, all are called as your intangible property. And coming to the transfer, as I said, the transfer can be done in the mainly two forms, that is the act of the parties or by the operation of the law, but we are not concerned with the operation law in the transfer of property, we only deal with the act of the parties. Then the act of the party deals with the transfer between two living parties, so that is based on the maxim called inter vivos. So hope I understood. Not only this two, we can also do the transfer in this all the forms, that is sale, exchange, gift, mortgage, lease, actionable claim. So you can complete your transfer in all these forms also. After this all things, a person has to know, a student has to know what the ownership, about the ownership. There are two types of ownership, that is absolute ownership and the lifetime ownership. Now what is absolute ownership? When the person is having all the rights means he can enjoy the property at the same time, he can sell the property, that time it is called as an absolute right. What is lifetime ownership? For the lifetime he can use the property, he can use the property and he can enjoy the property, but he could not sell the property, that time we will say that he is having a lifetime ownership. So for today this is all about the introduction class. So tomorrow's class will be with the other concept. Thank you class.